Welcome to Aware. We are dedicated to communicating information that inspires your positive growth and change. Are you interested in a peaceful planet? Are you interested in optimal health? Are you living with purpose? Are you enjoying your life? We realize each person can make a difference, and our mission is to empower your awareness. The choices that you make in every moment shape your life, and we encourage you to realize that you have your own answers and to always listen to your own truth. We invite you to stay aware.
Hello and welcome to The Aware Show. I am Lisa Garr, and it's such a privilege to be here with you today because we get to have conversations with experts, with brilliant people that really have great information that can either inspire your positive growth and change or point you in a new direction, maybe something that you can even share with a friend, which I also want to mention you can listen to this show at any time on our podcast, which is to be found wherever you love listening to podcasts. Go to The Aware Show and you can listen to it there, share with friends, make comments, all sorts of great things. So we're here whenever you need us. So today's show, we're talking about that gut feeling, that instinct, that intuition that you have that maybe tells you, if you tune in with it, what might be going on with your body. Women tend to have this around their children. Mothers tend to have this around their children. If I know what's wrong and they diagnose right away, or you have had it with yourself when you've said, I knew that particular thing was wrong. And then you went to a doctor maybe and it's confirmed. This is called medical intuition. And it has been used for decades to really explore and study and dive deeply into people's intuition, especially in the medical field. And that is what we're talking about today. My guest who's joining me, which I'm really excited about, is all about the essentials of medical intuition, how to find this in the world of medicine. Wendie Colter, my guest, and she is a certified medical intuitive. We're going to talk about what that is. Also mastered certified wellness coach and founder and CEO of The Practical Path. She's done many trials and studies talking about really trailblazing medical intuition in the medical field. And we're going to talk about that as well. Thank you so much for joining me, Wendie.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. It's such a pleasure.
Absolutely. And I'm really excited about this, your desire to make this peer reviewed, to bring this groundbreaking information that we tend to talk about a lot in our alternative worlds, but really to bring it to the medical community. Tell me a little bit about why you are motivated to do that. Why are you compelled to really bring this information into the medical community?
Well, I'll tell you a little story about that. When I began as a medical intuitive, I actually began as an energy healer, which many people do, Reiki and other forms of wonderful biofield practices. And I noticed that in my practice, I could see into the bodies of my clients. I could actually see right into their anatomy, into their physiology, and even into their life history. And many healers will tell you they get really powerful hits about things like that when they're doing their work. Well, this seemed like more than a hit. It was just like, there it was. So I noticed that in my practice, some people would come back again and again with the same issue. They weren't able to release it in the healing session. They were having trouble healing with whatever their issues were. And I wanted to find out if there was a way for me to ask deeper questions of the body and the biofield to find out why that was, right? Why is somebody not healing? What is their body trying to tell them? What is it that the body wants and needs? And that became what I call a medical intuitive assessment, which is a process that I developed over time that was very methodical and in which I could get really in-depth and detailed information from my client, not only physical, but also emotional, mental, spiritual. And what I found was that my clients were saying that session that you gave me, and it wasn't even a healing session, it was an information session. They said that made such a difference. They were able to take that to their doctors, as you mentioned. They were able to find other ways of thinking about their own health and well-being. And it really turned a corner for them. And I realized that is something that can really help in healthcare. And I have many case studies and stories that just underline that.
It's so many things that you just said are so interesting because you mentioned that there's a link between the body, the emotion, and the illness or diagnosis that's going on in the body. Can you talk about that in terms of what you see as a medical intuitive, that link between the emotions and the stress and the physicality in the body?
Oh, it's just a one-to-one.
It's so
um,
amazing. Yeah.
it really is. Our bodies, I'll give you the basic tenet. The basic tenet of medical intuition, the way I see it, the way I practice it, and the way I teach it, is that the body holds information pertaining not only to physical imbalance, because it does that, but also emotional, mental, spiritual, all kinds of imbalances. And this particular concept is very understood in healthcare already now with adverse childhood experiences, which has been extremely well studied, meaning early life traumatic events leading to later life health issues. It's also studied in epigenetics coming down the family line, where and also the field of psychoneuroimmunology, which studies our emotions and our immune system and our nervous system. So there's this connection that science has already acknowledged, that medical intuitives is seeing the connections. I mean, you said decades, I'll say centuries. We've been seeing this for centuries, and it's really wonderful when science kind of acknowledges what we already see.
Yeah, yes, that would be great, but it tends not to. It's there's this diagnosis and it has nothing to do with your diet and it doesn't have anything to do with your I mean, stress levels
Yeah.
are starting to finally find the link, but um there are certain cancers that they don't relate back to food at all.
Or anything else. Yeah,
Anything else.
and this is one of the, you asked me why I'm, why I'm on my soapbox about this,
I
so to
get it.
speak,
Yes.
is because that I've worked, and many medical intuitives we've worked with doctors under the radar for, there's decades there, a long time. And I noticed that early in my practice, doctors would call me and say, hey, can you look at this patient? I'm not sure what's going on here. And I would be able to see connections that Western medicine doesn't have a language for or a framework for. And I was seeing what now is called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I was seeing that years and years ago before it was really understood, or Lyme disease and the effects of it. Now we have COVID and all of the effects of that. This is where medical intuition really belongs in healthcare, because we can discern, like I said, these connections that really Western medicine is too, I think
A
you'd
little
call it
far
tunnel
behind
vision.
on.
Well,
Yeah, they're a
well,
little far behind. I mean, these things are new.
well,
SIBO and
yes,
yeah, in the medical community, they're new, but they're
yes,
also rampantly growing in society and communities. And
yeah,
in the meantime, they're doing studies and research around it, but people are having major complications from COVID and SIBO and things that can actually be addressed now. But by the time they come up with all of the randomized clinical studies and everything, it's a
yeah,
little late.
yeah.
So I'd love to know how you developed this technique. Was this something you were born with? Is this a gift? Do we have it?
Well, this is what I feel about intuition. We all have it. It's hardwired into us. We're born with it. Everybody's born with
Right?
it. The question is, do you want to develop it? And just like anything, as if you wanted to learn Italian or another language, you wouldn't think, well, I must not be able to do that. We would think, well, what do I need to do that? I would need, the right teacher, the right practice, the right time, the right immersion, whatever. And we think about education in that way, but we don't think about intuitive education in that way, unfortunately, because it is so stigmatized in our society, right? I use a kind of intuition that uses the mind's eye for visualization. That's the kind of intuition I use. That is something that I cultivated over time, and I studied and I learned and I cultivated it. And seeing into the body became very natural to me because I had cultivated that aspect of intuition. And there's a dozen aspects of intuition, if not more. So that's really how I think about it.
So that you have the mind's eye technique. So is that a closed eyes process for you to be able to visualize? Tell me how you do that.
Well, how I do it is what I teach, but I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks very much like a functional MRI. and even in color.
Wow.
And so that it's a very visual process, and you can see from any part of the physical anatomy and physiology all the way down to the cellular level. I remember someone recently asked me, well, can you see to the subatomic level? And I said, yes, there are medical intuitives working in science who are looking at it from that perspective. So really the applications of it are kind of endless when you think about the process of it.
Fascinating. Absolutely wonderful. And yes, you do teach this technique, which is so refreshing. I'm so grateful that you teach the practice and the program that you have well defined and used over years to be able to actually teach somebody else to be able to do. But I do want to ask you about a study that you did. I find it really, really interesting, about the study that you did with the medical intuitions and the at UCSD. Could you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yes, I partnered with I got the support really and collaborated with some colleagues down at UCSD Medical Center at their School of Medicine. It wasn't done through UCSD, it was done separately as a private study. But this study, I'll tell you why I did the study, Lisa, because there
Yes.
was so little information about medical intuition out there. There are wonderful books, Carolyn Mace, Edgar Casey, other medical intuitives, but no, very, very little research, some, but not enough. And the last research was done 20 years ago. And the last, I couldn't even, all the studies have been somewhat inconclusive because it's not an easy thing to study, given the empirical randomized control trial, all of that. We're talking about intuition here, so it's a
Yes.
little less, able to be
Subjective
defined. Yeah, but I'll
could
tell you
be.
what, I knew that my students and myself, we had very high anecdotal success rates because it's a rigorous program. The students fill out case reports. We keep track of everything. And so we saw just, accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. And we wanted to test it in a way where we could gather data. So we put together essentially a survey, and we had 5 of my medical intuitive graduates from the program. Yes, it is an eyes closed process, so that's a kind of blinding, right? We had 67 people from the community down there, Scripps Memorial Hospital, folks from their cardiac treatment center. We had folks from UCSD Medical Center. It was really a great group. And nobody really knew much about medical intuition. It was, did they want to participate? Now, we didn't have access to their health records, which makes this more of a qualitative study. However, what the medical intuitives did was we gave them sessions, eyes closed, no visual information, right? So there was none of that. And of course, no intake. We don't ever do an intake. You'd call it a cold read. In other words, someone sits down, we look at their energy, we look at their bodies, we read them. Not physically, energetically. So here's what we came out with. We came out with a 94% accuracy rate in location and evaluation of their primary health issue. Location and evaluation of their primary health issue, which we thought was fantastic, 94%. We also got um,
Yes.
100% accuracy, which you really almost can't even talk about in the scientific world because they're like, nothing can be 100%. Well, the participants rated the medical intuitives as 100% accurate in secondary location, a location and evaluation of their secondary health issue, right? So we saw all kinds of things. And they said, yes, you're accurate here. You're even more accurate here. You're going to be more accurate over there. So we were really excited with that.
That is
Um,
fascinating. That
yes,
is fascinating. So
yeah.
now this was published then, right?
Yes, and let me give you the other just a little bit more because it's really interesting. Medical intuition isn't just the physical. It's also how things can manifest into the physical. So we need to look into someone's life history. Where did this thing manifest? Where did it begin? And we had a 98% accuracy, 98%, which we were thrilled with, in possible or probable. In other words, some people had memories, some didn't, of life experience that correlated to their health issue. We also had a 94% consistency with a known medical diagnosis. Now, that means the participant had a diagnosis from their doctor, and the medical intuitive was 94% consistent with that. You know, those numbers kind of eclipsed anything that had come before we were happy to see. And it was published in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, which is a peer-reviewed medical journal. There you go. And that was published in 2020.
2020. And there were 67 participants in the study.
Yeah.
And how long did that take, that particular study?
It was about 6 to 8 months over a period of time. We were gathering this data. And when we finally compiled it all, it kind of blew us away, to be honest. We didn't expect those numbers to be so high. And because of that, I'm really, really pleased to say that we've partnered with a really wonderful research organization, Institute of Noetic Sciences.
Oh, great.
And I think it's Institute for, excuse me, IONS.
No, Institute of Noetic Sciences.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
And they're wonderful. And we're preparing a new study based on that data and what else we can glean. We're going to work directly with doctors and patients, and we're very excited about that.
That is very important. And I'm really curious about, how do you train people to do this?
Well, it's a right brain experience to a left brain audience. Because
Okay.
I teach wellness professionals. So these are, from physicians, nurses, to massage therapists, body workers, acupuncturists, and on to health coaches. No judgment there. I'm a health coach myself.
Yes.
And in other words, people who are working with clients and patients already. They have a practice. They want to integrate this because they see the value of it. And so most of the time when you're talking about, medical training of any kind, you're talking about a very specific and precise practice and protocol. And medical intuition, the way I've developed it, is also a specific and precise methodical practice. So the two of those things can mesh together and actually integrate. And that's how I set it up.
Fantastic. How long does it take to go through? And I love that you're training doctors.
Yes, more and more. Yeah.
Fantastic. So my dad was a physician for 40 years, orthopedic surgeon, and he had amazing diagnostic skills. I mean, he diagnosed me with, I forgot what, mental memory loss. No, I forgot. It was I had like 100-degree temperature right away off the bat, and it was something that I contracted in the water. It was a very, very bad virus. And he diagnosed me right away, and
Good for him.
over the phone. And it's just, it takes a while to learn how to just trust your gut, despite all of the medical school that you go through.
That is probably the biggest learning curve for the physicians and nurses and the folks that really have that kind of very deep and profound training. But I will say this, I've presented this work and taught at the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. And these, I was teaching fourth-year medical students and residents, and they loved it. They totally understood that there's something more that we have to look for. And I also want to make a distinction, Lisa, if you don't mind, and that is that diagnosis is a word that can only, and a practice that can only be done by a licensed healthcare professional who's licensed to diagnose. Medical intuitives, for the most part, even though many, many of them now, more and more, are identifying that way and have that kind of skill set. I don't. I'm not a medical professional. I don't come from that background. So I don't never diagnose. What I do is I'll describe what I see. I'll give my client lots and lots of information, and I tell them, take this to your doctor, explain this to your doctor, and see what can happen. And we're getting great results with that.
Wow, fantastic. Well, by the way, there was spinal meningitis that my father had diagnosed. Apparently it affected my brain, but
yeah, that's a big one.
He was, it was one of those split second things. And I do appreciate you saying that you don't diagnose, because you guide. And if somebody can, my desire is to see all of us as individuals have the full permission to go to our physicians and say, look, you've been through, 20 years of medical school. I went to a medical intuitive and she said this. Could you please direct your diagnosis this way?
Yes.
Great. That's
I know that's
fantastic.
well, more of my clients are telling me that's what we direct them. We say, please take this to your doctor. You can language it anyway. You don't have to tell somebody you've been to a medical intuitive if that doesn't feel comfortable.
But it should
But
be
I will.
acceptable.
Well,
Mhm.
that's it. It should be, and we're working towards that.
That's what I love. Now, how did you discover, first of all, that you even had these abilities? Tell us a little bit about your background and when you first recognized that you could see into people's bodies.
Probably since I was a kid. I was always an intuitive child, and luckily I was raised in a household where intuition was not considered taboo. My mother was an artist, and my father, was fine with creative pursuits, so they all figured this was just one of Wendie's weird little creative pursuits. So I was able to kind of work with it and play with it a lot when I was a kid. And there's incidents after incident in my life that sort of pointed me in the direction of intuition and trusting it. That's really the main thing, is you learn how to trust it when you learn how to cultivate it. It takes time. But I noticed that when my mother used to tell me, when you were a kid, you used to be able to look at someone and say, that person's not feeling well.
Ah, as a child,
I
interesting.
couldn't have told you what, but even if you don't have that in your background, that's not a stopping point, because intuition really exists in everyone, and we there's all kinds of it, and we can decide if we want to, bring it forward. But I will tell you a story. I'll tell you a case study of when I realized that the intuition that I had as a healer was something more than just this really kind of groovy, fun thing I could do, right? And it became really powerful turning point for me in understanding what the skill is about. So this was a young woman who came to me for a session, a medical intuitive session. She was having kidney pain in sort of her mid back, and she'd had it for quite a while. This is almost 20 years ago now, when I was just starting my practice. She had been to every doctor in town, right? And nobody could find the source of the pain. So what they did was they gave her opioids because she was clearly in pain, and they also gave her antidepressants because she was having trouble coping with it. So there she was. That was it. That's all she got. When I looked at her back area, what I saw almost immediately was her kidney had a little crystallization that had come right out of the kidney and kind of embedded itself. It lodged. It wasn't moving down the ureter tube, and it wasn't going to. It was just sort of sitting there. And so what I do is I have a conversation with the body, the parts of the body, the parts of the physiology, like what's going on, what do you want? And I'm asking, do you want gallons and gallons of water so she can just flush it out? What do you want? And the kidney very clearly showed me, go see a surgeon. That's what it said. That's what it wanted. It wanted a surgeon to look at it. Interesting. So what I did was I drew her a picture and I said, okay, here you go. Now the deal with this, because I'm like, well, why can't the doctor see this? It was because it was less than, I think, 2 millimeters or something. It was too small for the technology at the time to even read it. So
Hmm.
to them, it wasn't there. To me, I could see it, and she could feel it. So that was the end of that session. And I found out later what happened for her. She did find a surgeon who would listen to her and took her case. They had a procedure. She was out of pain, right? Now, what happened for her is that she was addicted to the opioids by then. And she was so addicted that you know what's going to happen. She died of an overdose of opioids. And hearing about that a couple of years later was like, what just happened here? I mean, I think about it and I get choked up because it
Yes.
never should have occurred. And that made me realize, what if her doctors had been able to call me, right? What
Mm.
if what if doctors knew they could call a medical intuitive to take a look when their tests were inconclusive, when symptoms were not obvious, when, all of that.
Yes.
Would she still
Yes.
be alive? I don't that
Right, right. And you can see these, where they also, there's an undescribed amount of cancer, or you don't know what the relationship is there to the, cancer can be very tricky.
yeah.
And there are probably a lot of things that you can see in the body that maybe it takes biopsies and so forth that are very difficult and very painful to go after to be able to see. And
Well, there's nothing
That's
wrong with testing, and I
yeah.
believe in testing. In fact, I usually suggest it to clients if they're concerned about it, because I'm not, I'm looking at energy here, and it needs to be corroborated. However, I will tell you, the MDs that come through the program and the nurse practitioners and those diagnosticians, they are so excited about this because it shortens the time of, first of all, unnecessary tests is a huge problem, huge.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
it can help hone that.
Yeah.
It's certainly cost effective because of it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it can get
Right.
right to the root of the issue for the patient, more quickly and efficiently. And that's really where we see medical intuition. When I say we, I mean my colleagues and an organization we're forming in the U.S. called the National Organization for Medical Intuition. Uh,
Yay! Congratulations.
thank you.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, I have my brother's this perfect candidate because he's got a spot. He went through, the prostate cancer situation, and he's got a spot on his ribs that they cannot diagnose. I mean, they can't biopsy.
yeah,
So it's underneath the heart, and they can't get to it. So
yeah.
it's like radiate the entire body. I mean, this would be an amazing thing for him. So it's that's just an example of something that can lead in the right direction and can get you to a path of, do we go down this path, or do we wait for numbers to come back a little longer, type of thing. It's definitely something that you have to always collaborate, but that you're doing some type of a certification is fantastic within the medical community. How long before something like that takes effect?
Well, my program is a certification program. So you asked how long it is, and I think I skipped over that question.
Oh yeah.
It's a 1 year program. There's two levels. The first level is looking at the biofield. What is that? The auric field, the chakra system. We need to look at all that energetically, all that energetic part of our anatomy. And the second level is the physical body reading and life history reading. And you put it all together and you have a very comprehensive way to look at physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and get all that good data. The National Organization for Medical Intuition is launching at the end of this month, July 2022, and we're very excited. And that will be basically an organization for professional medical intuitives to come together to begin to build our field and integrate it into conventional healthcare and mainstream healthcare. That's our goal.
That is fantastic. National Organization for Medical Intuition. Is that what you
Yeah.
called it?
Yes.
Very, very good. Now, is all of this or many of these stories and techniques covered in your book, The
Yeah.
Essentials of Medical Intuition?
Yes, they're all covered in my book. And what's also covered in my book are interviews with doctors who work with medical intuitives and doctors and other people who are medical intuitives, acupuncturists and whatnot, and how it's helped them in their practice. So I wanted to write a book, Lisa, that really didn't just focus on my techniques, but focused on the field of medical intuition because I want this to be in curriculums, right? I want people to understand this. So I essentially set out to write, a textbook that everybody could read, that was really open, that everybody could understand, patients, clients, and medical professionals or healthcare professionals. So that's, hopefully I've achieved that.
Yes, well, that's a great idea because
Yeah.
it's not just for your medical professionals, but for patients and people like us that can read about the case studies and the history and the research and some of those great interviews. That's a great idea, and help you understand the field of medical intuition so that when you're maybe a patient, you can go to your healthcare provider and say, look, this is really valid and this is helpful for these people. Could we try this out? So the more you empower the end user, us with the body, the
Hmm.
more that this gets to be walked into doctors' offices by individuals, which is great. And I'm just curious about um, how do you turn it on and turn it off? I'm sure you're asked that question a lot, but how do you not be scanning into people that you're meeting and specifically focus on their bodies?
People ask that question a lot, and the answer is it takes skills and technique and practice. Because I used to be able to walk into a group of, room full of people and go, stop eating cheddar cheese and you need more sleep. And, it's like, that's just overstepping. And
Yeah.
actually, I consider it unethical, frankly. It's spiritually unethical to be looking to other people's energy without their permission. So the idea is, number one, for the practitioner is to learn what I call energy hygiene skills, which are designed for you to be in control of your energy. And for people who identify as empaths or clairsentients, that's a real challenge because you feel like you're soaking it all up, right?
Constantly,
Uh,
yes.
yeah. And other people just feel like they have too many antennas going on all the time and whatever it is. So that really starts from the beginning of the program. And I also have a workshop, which will be a self-study program, hopefully launching at the end of this year, where anyone can learn how to work with and moderate their own energy so that they can feel in control of it. They can feel in charge of it. That's really important. That's thing one. And I actually call that neutrality. Those are neutrality skills, right?
Mm. Now, is that different than the self-scanning techniques that you teach people? Is that a different modality that you're talking about?
No, the workshop actually has a couple of things. One is those energy hygiene skills, which are also in the book, and self-scanning techniques, which are also in the book and on the website, and also opening up that mind-body connection, right? We talk about that all the time. What does it mean? Well, wouldn't you like to have a conversation with your liver or your spine or
Yes.
your toes? Sure. So we want to be able to discuss with our body parts what it is they're asking for, our systems. And so that I teach in a workshop called Medical Intuition for Healing Workshop. And some of those skills and tools are in the book, and some of them are also on the website as guided meditations. So I encourage anyone who's interested, go take a look.
Okay, let's just talk about this for a second because I've had a pain in my back for a very long time. And do I talk to the pain and wait for an answer? Can you teach us just a little bit about how to have this dialogue with our bodies?
Sure. Now I'm going to talk about it in terms of how I use intuition, which is, remember, that mind's eye. So on the website, there's an audio in the guided meditations called Your Body's Wisdom. And I recommend you listen to it. It's about 7 minutes long, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of focus in using your mind's eye, imagining that you're looking at that part of your body and having a dialogue with it. And that takes a little practice, especially if something's
Mhm.
in pain, and really inflamed. But don't forget, your body's trying to get your attention all the time. And our bodies have their own awareness and consciousness. So basically, you use those energy hygiene techniques, get grounded, a little shielding, you know, kind of get anything out of your energy that you don't want there, have a seat and imagine you can see that body part and that you're having just a really nice little conversation with it. And in the audio, I guide you through some questions to ask and just be present for the answer. That sounds almost impossible if it's a big issue. But I have to tell you
Well,
that it's, go ahead, please.
I mean, if you get an answer that you don't know what to do with, and the answer I've gotten in the back in the past was, you were stabbed in the back.
Oh, that sounds like a past life thing or something.
Oh,
or
okay.
or something from this life where you felt stabbed in the back. And so that's one kind of answer. And that actually goes along with sort of the emotional, mental, spiritual. But if you want the physical, let me give you an example of this. In one of my workshops, I'll give you two examples because it's so much fun. In one of my students in the workshop, every time she talked to her lower back, it kept showing her pictures of blueberries in her mind's eye. Blueberries. What does that have to do with back pain? Well, that's what her back wanted. So she went out the next day, she bought a couple of pints of blueberries and just started snacking on them, and her back pain went away. Now, what could that have been?
I wish it was that easy.
For
Yes.
her, it was a mind blower because her body was adamant about it. And what she thinks, and what might be the case, is that she was very low on vitamin C or some kind of antioxidant. It was causing the muscles. I mean, who knows? But whatever it was, there it was. And another example of this, and these are just things that people find when they start doing this work, was a yoga teacher who had a really, really sore muscle. And, she was an athlete. So when athletes they want to just work out, right? So if you have a sore muscle, you just do more, right? You don't do less.
Hmm.
And her muscle kept saying, well, you just stop already. Just slow
Uh,
down. I need rest. I need to relax. I need to heal. And that was news to her because her normal way would have just been to work it out, right?
work
So
through it. Hmm.
these, or work through it. These are the kinds of things that you can find out from your body. So if your body's telling you that you were stabbed in the back, there's probably more there to pull out and
How do
discuss.
you, right? I mean, how do you work with that ancestry in the body, that ancestral energy, or it could be past life energy, like you said? How do you know the difference? You're probably really skilled at it, but does it look differently to you?
Everything looks differently in everybody's body. And actually,
Mm.
that's a real tenet of my work. I have trouble with bias, any kind of bias out there. And the medical world is nothing but bias, right? And for good reason. You have to look through a specific lens. If you're a specialist, you need to see in a specific way. And that's what you're taught in medical school or any kind of healthcare training. I mean, energy healers, we get taught very specific ways of doing things. So it's across the board. Medical intuition is the opposite of that, Lisa. We can't have a bias. If I looked at your body and it said, oh, I really need, whatever it is, and some medication or something from the conventional medicine world, if I had a bias against that, would I be helping you? Absolutely not. Right?
Right,
So
right.
I don't have a specific way of saying this means that. And anytime I hear this means that, I have to say, well, wait a minute. Until I look at your body, I don't know that this means that. I have to look. Right?
Mm.
So,
Okay, well, say that was my personal feeling. How would I clear something like that in order to relieve myself of the pain?
yes. So again, I know this isn't quite, the specific answer you're hoping for, but because everybody's physiology and anatomy is so
Is
different,
different.
then
Yes.
your body might be asking for one thing and another person's body might be asking for something else that have what, a physician might go or a practitioner might go, well, that's the same issue. Well, what if the treatment isn't this? You know that when you go see a chiropractor, they have all these different techniques. Some are going to work for you, better for your body, and some might work
Right.
better for another person. Same thing. So
Right.
there's really no one answer, I'm afraid to say.
Well,
There's a
you can
thousand
also get
answers.
more, like, if that hasn't worked for me up to this point, which it hasn't, I should probably take a different approach.
Well, you can also go
Because,
consult a medical intuitive because
yeah,
we're the ones, if they're trained properly and they're qualified, they'll be able to see in some fashion, discern, I should say, what the body is really asking for and, give you some very good detail about it.
and that's just going back to the organization that you're forming, the National Organization for Medical Intuition. Is that in attempt to really validate the work, the body of work, and to show some of these techniques, some of these practices, some of these studies?
Absolutely. And we're very aligned with the ION study and any other study. If anyone listening wants to do another kind of study on medical intuition, contact me. We would very much like to support research and outreach. We're developing policy for hospitals. We're doing all kinds of things that can really help integrate this and raise awareness about it, really.
Is there a way that you can have maybe a resource guide for people that are trained under your program, that you can really find somebody who's an accurate medical intuitive? Is there a way
Yes.
to legitimize the field?
Well, this is what we're working on. I can tell you that everyone who's graduated my program as a certified medical intuitive practitioner through the practical path, they have my technique down. They've learned my technique. And we've tested them at 94 to 98% accuracy rates. The students that took part in that study, Lisa, had just completed their 1-year program. Okay, they
Oh,
didn't have 10 years under their belt. They had
wow.
just completed it, and that's another wonderful validation of the work.
Right.
Um, and so I would say you can go to the website. We have some, not all, but some of our practitioners are listed there, and more are coming. And they come from all walks of wellness care, and people can read a little bit about them. But
And
the
that's the
national,
practicalpath.com, by the way. It's been on your lower third there. But do you have a list of doctors that work with intuitives? The other way around?
I'm hoping we can put something like that together. In my practice, yes, I've worked with many doctors, and many medical intuitives will tell you they work with doctors. As a matter of fact, if you don't mind me going there, the National Organization for Medical Intuition, before we officially formed, this was a working group of professional medical intuitives, some of whom have been in the field for over 40 years. And we wanted to gather information on how this skill is being used because it's like the Wild West. Everybody does their own thing and they're all out
Right.
there doing it and nobody knows. So we did a survey and we queried hundreds of self-identified medical intuitives. We said, what do you do? How do you do it? Do you work with licensed physicians? Are you, or licensed practitioners? Are you a licensed practitioner, etc.? We found out, and again, nobody had ever thought to even ask this question, but we found out, excuse me, that of those surveyed, 82% work directly or assist licensed healthcare professionals. 82% of medical intuitives.
Really?
Like myself, I could say yes to that because I work with doctors all the time directly. Now, 86% said that they receive referrals from licensed medical professionals, which is not surprising. I do that too. But there you go. And we found
Yes.
that of those surveyed, 30% were themselves licensed healthcare professionals. There are some numbers that we never expected.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's huge, which is great and very needed in today's day where we're in midst of this of COVID and people are having these long haul syndromes that doctors can't necessarily or don't have the um, solutions on just quite yet, or the body just needs to ride it out. Are you seeing anything specific around COVID or lung health or this, particular virus? What are you seeing these days?
Uh, um, you can imagine this has been a big topic of concern, as it should be. It's a new virus. The body obviously didn't have any defenses against it, so that's why it's been so difficult and really tragic, the way it's been dealt with. Um, I'm hoping that it is continues to mutate down, and I think that's what the medical world is wanting to. And I see that. But let me just say this, not to be negative or at all. As the planet changes, as climate change, if we don't start to bring it back, these kinds of things might be more and more prevalent. And one of the things that I generally tell my students and any of my clients all of my clients is, let's get our immune systems as strong as they can be, because we need as many defenses as possible as we move forward here, as things do change. And this particular is the first global pandemic since 1918. So, we were unprepared for it. We shouldn't be unprepared again. And that's personal and societal.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an aggressive virus. And yeah, our bodies, for some reason, it's just, they hadn't recognized or built up the immunity to it since it just came on the scene all of a sudden. So, how do you suggest strengthening the immune system other than just vitamins? Do you recommend things like vitamin drip therapy or going really beyond your typical taking multivitamin type of thing for immune system?
Well, because I'm not a wellness healthcare professional, I cannot, you know, prescribe or any of that stuff. But what I can say is that generally speaking, right now in history, certainly in the US, everybody's under stress. I mean, it is just rampant. And
Oh
for
yeah.
all the reasons we're aware, not just COVID, but the social and political environment, and no matter what side of it you're on, it's stressful. And it's really, really important for us to pay attention to our body's responses to stress. I would say if there's any one thing I've seen across the board, it's that. And that's personal, in our lives, into our societies, our communities, all of it. We need to find ways. And the best way I know, Lisa, is to work with our energy systems, because that to me is it's not the place it starts, but excuse me, it is the place it starts.
Yeah, I was going
It
to say
is
it
the
is the
place it
place it
starts.
starts.
Yes.
Yes.
And that the physical is where it kind of manifests. So when we work with our energy systems, the grounding and the shielding and the cleaning out of our energy and meditating, just taking a 5-minute break to just breathe. These things are critical to our emotional, mental, and certainly physical health. And so that's what I would say. And I think there's lots of studies about how meditation raises immunity.
It's,
So,
I mean, even look at the ancient practice of yoga, 5,000-year-old practice. And it's definitely been around for a long time for a reason, because it involves a lot of those great things: meditation, stretching, breathing. Yeah. And it's a deep, deep practice. So there's so many different things that are available to us to be able to strengthen the immune system other than just vitamin C. It's true. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
vitamin C is great. Please, definitely, there's like a whole COVID cocktail of the C, D, quercetin. I'm sure you can look it up online. But in addition to that, it's around your thoughts and your food and your stress levels and inflammation in the body and all of those things. Do you ever notice that you could tell somebody how to eat and what they should do and how to react, but they just don't do it?
well, now you're talking my language here because yes, of course, we have all kinds of reasons why, compliance is down. And
Right.
I will say that one of the things that we found in our research is that after a medical intuitive session, compliance goes up. Doctors are thrilled about that because why do you think? Because it's not someone telling you what to do. It's someone saying, here's what your body is asking for. Here's why it's asking for it. And here's where this is what you're asking. Here's where the resistance is in your energy to that. Let's see if we can move that needle. Let's see if we can get I call it your permission level up so that your body and you are more in sync, your body and your mind. And that is what creates health, in my opinion.
That actually is a better way of doing it, to say, look, wheat, dairy, meat, get them out of your diet, as opposed to you telling the body, do you really like how you feel after you eat these things? And if you're noticing that you're feeling discomfort, why don't you try to eliminate them for a week and see how your body feels? And you can really negotiate with the body and say, okay, let's try this because I might feel better and I might have more energy, or I might lose weight or feel like working out or something like that, where you can get the body's buy-in. And
Yeah.
that makes a lot more sense. Yep.
Yes, it does. And also, to go back to my this does not equal that kind of idea. I don't know if your body would love keto or would love vegan. I mean, I don't know
That's
until
a
I
great
look.
question.
Yeah, until I
Hmm.
look and see. So we have right now, and this has been going on forever, but everyone says, do this, do that, do this. When it comes to healthcare, it's enough to drive you crazy. I mean, it does drive people crazy. But when I look at the body, I'm not asking, that. I'm not telling it what to do. I would say, well, what is it that you would resonate best with? How would your digestive system work with this? How would your gut health work with that? How is your sleep being affected by this? And that is a whole different kind of conversation.
Hmm. Is there a difference between a medical intuitive and a healer?
Very much so.
Big
Um,
difference, huh?
well, in my definition, yes. There are many healers that are also medical intuitives, but there also are medical intuitives that are not necessarily energy healers, because we're talking about biofield healing, I think you mean, right? Yeah?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
where you can say, oh, you have digestive problems, let me heal that for you, that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Energy,
Different.
like Reiki, healing touch, pranic healing. Those modalities are fantastic. And when I was an energy healer, one of the things that struck me most when I was starting to do medical intuitive assessments is, well, okay, person's body, client's body, will my modality be useful for their body? Will it help? And the
Mm.
answer wasn't always yes. There might have been a different modality or whole set of things that could be better. And you don't think that changed my opinion. That was why I don't have a bias, because my modality, which is wonderful, is a bias, right? So I can't look at your body and go, yes, you have to do this, or no, you can't do that, or whatever. It's whatever the body's asking for.
Why did you choose to go from being the energy healer to just the medical intuitive?
For this reason. that I was mentioning, in that my modality may or may not be the best thing for you. What if there's 5 other things that would work better? I should look and find out, shouldn't I? To me, that's a good ethical stance. Number 2, I found that the informational process of a medical intuitive assessment was so valuable, so packed with information for the client, that they had so many wonderful takeaways that the healing part, well, I found that some people were able to actually spontaneously heal after a medical intuitive session. And some of the stories in the book will tell you that. That completely not the point of the session, but that can happen because people feel more validated. They hear from their body what it's asking for. They take other kinds of action they might not have had taken
They're a
before.
partner in the process. They're more
Thank you.
so involved with the process and not just given a pill to say this is going to help you, because
Exactly.
it may or may not if you don't have the buy-in from the body, the real full mind body buy-in. And that's how I think real change happens, is it all begins with a decision.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
that decision comes from a choice. And that choice is, do I want to feel better, or do I want to not continue to feel the way that I feel if it's bad? And once that choice is made, the decision to change is made, and then you seek the information that you need, or it comes to you. And it's amazing. How long does it take you to get someone to that place? I mean, I'm sure it isn't just one spontaneous healing session. I mean, how long does it, in your experience, take for you to work with someone to really help them make lasting, permanent change?
Well, lasting permanent change is always up to the client. It really is.
So I'm saying, yeah.
Nobody, even a healthcare provider, can't do that
Right.
in someone's energy. Someone has to decide, as you very well put it. One session is a ton of information. In a 1-hour session, basically what I call it is a roadmap. And the body and the energy field and all the information, the life history, all of this creates an understanding of why there is imbalance in the first place, what kind of imbalance, what is the body asking for, and that information is very rich and very detailed. So in one session, someone can really get so much information to move forward with. That's the goal, and that's what happens, I hope. That, I often don't see people for 6 months because they've taken action on it, right? So they'll call me
Nice.
back in a few months or whatever, and they'll say, hey, that really worked, or this happened and that happened. And it's great to hear, because my job is as a guide, as you said earlier. That's how I see it. And if I can guide people in a way that can help them, and who goes to medical intuitives, Lisa? Historically, the people that haven't had any help from the
Mm.
Western medical world, and they're
Mm.
left with no choice. For someone to hear from their doctor, I can't help you anymore, is one of the
They've
most
tried everything. Yes. Yes.
devastating for people. So medical intuitives have, sort of traditionally seen that kind of client, but I hope that is changing as well, or expanding, I should say, because that will always be there, and that's not a failure of anything but the fact that Western medicine doesn't have a context. That's it.
Mm.
There's just no context for it.
Do you do these sessions, or have you trained people to do them mostly remotely? Because that could actually save a lot of hardship and cost and money to do
Yes,
remote
absolutely.
sessions.
Everything is remote, and actually I teach live online. All my programs are live online, so we get students from all over the country, all over the world, and everybody works in class together. So yes, it is 100% remote skill. You can do it by phone or by Zoom or whatever.
That, well, I'm considering if you have people with their eyes closed and they're just looking into people's energy field, of course you could probably do it remotely and teach it remotely, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
And just quick question, with somebody who wants to lose weight and things that aren't so life threatening, do you also help with things like that?
without
Like
question,
stop smoking,
absolutely.
things like that?
Anything and everything. And, because anything and everything always has all the components to it, right? It
Oh,
has it has everything. If it's stopping smoking, what's caused, what is the
the addiction
mechanism with,
from,
yeah, there's a million ways there's tons of information to get and to discern from those kinds of questions. So people call me when they have something small, they call me when they have something big. It's all fine.
so you still work with individuals?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's really great. And well, and do you have things that you recommend? So say you do find someone with the SIBO, do you recommend specific better enzymes that you've researched or things that you've looked at and so forth?
Yeah, as a non-licensed practitioner, I have to be very careful about that. However, I can see if the body has, the stomach, for example, has low acid and it's asking for digestive enzymes. I can see if there's an overgrowth of bacteria and what it's asking for, and I have a body of knowledge that I can pull from to see if this will work or that will work and test it, visually test it. We can do visual kinds of blood testing. We can do all kinds of things. There's really no,
Wow.
I know it's wild, but this is what we can do with this skill set. So you see that the applications are kind of endless.
That is amazing. Wow. Okay. Well, it is really great to know about you. And the website is thepracticalpath.com. And I really appreciate your knowledge, your information, and the fact that you teach people how to do this. It's not all about you, even though it's great to be about you, but you're only one person. So thank you for that ability to want to share this with the medical community and with us individuals with the bodies. We really appreciate that.
It's my pleasure, and I just want to mention the book again,
Hmm.
Essentials of Medical Intuition: A Visionary Path to Wellness, that you can find on the website, on Amazon, anywhere books are sold. And I really appreciate. Thank you so much for having me, Lisa. It's just such a pleasure to see that you resonate and understand with this, and I know your audience will as well.
It's yes, especially coming from a background of a doctor's daughter. It's really, I
Mhm.
see the need for something like this and how it's really evolving to the next step of integrative medicine. So great. Thank you so much for getting this into the policy making as well. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, we're doing
All
our best.
right. And if you loved this interview and you want to share this information with your friends, please do. This is the way that we get this type of information connected with other people that you know and love. So feel free to go to the podcast, which is easy to share right from there. You can find that at the awareshow.com website or listen wherever you listen to your podcast. Just look up The Aware Show and you can link to it from there. Thank you again. I'm Lisa Garr, and until next time, I invite you to stay aware.